All right, so this video is going to be the equation of a circle. All right, so you have a Desmos activity that is really just to kind of play around with circles, see how they work, see how the equation works. Remember, as I'm grading it, I'm really just looking at whether you tried it and what you did with it. I'm not really looking to have taught you the full in-depth way to graph and to write the equations of circles because we're not really in school together. Equations of circles are really nice because they're really more simple than you think that they would be. I'm going to write it and it's going to look really, really kind of awful. And you're going to think, oh my God, that's horrifying. But what's really cool about it is this letter and this letter give us our center. And then this letter, when we take the square root of it, will give us our radius. So even though it looks like this really big, complicated, terrible thing with squares on it, we really ignore the squares, especially if it's written in this corrected format and not the expanded version. And what we do is we say, oh, okay, we take this number. Notice it's got a negative stuck in the equation. So what happens is when we actually take the value, we change its sign. So if it was a -4, we would just use 4. If it was a +4, we'd use a negative. So it's kind of like that idea when you're trapped with your x, you do the opposite. But because y also has a negative stuck in it, we also are going to do the opposite when we pull that out. And then, like I said, the radius, you just would have to take the square root of it. So for example, if I gave an equation, we could figure out where the center of this circle is and how big the radius is, and then we could graph it. Now, my graph's not going to be perfect because I'm not a robot human. A robot human? Anyway, I am not a robot, and I am a human, and therefore, when I try to draw it, it's not going to be perfect, but I can very easily find the center and the radius from the equation. All right, so the value in here looks like a -3. Because we know the negative is trapped in with the equation, I know that that center point for the x value is really going to be a +3. Now here, this looks like a +2, but remember, this equation was really a negative. So what makes a negative turn positive? It's another negative. So +2 is really the same as -2. So my y value for my center will be -2. All right, so I want you to always remember for when it's in this parenthesis with the minus sign, you always take the opposite sign for the center. So if it was a negative, it goes positive. If it was a positive, it goes negative. And then our radius will be the square root of 9, which is 3. So now when I graph this, I'm going to need a little more on that side. I go to 3, -2, which is here. And then what I like to do is I like to count 3 up, down, right, and left from my center because it's the radius. So so the radius is the same in every direction. And then what I do is I go ahead and I just put points there. Now, I'm bad at drawing circles, so you'll have to forgive me. But so I'll go 1, 2, 3 for the radius of 3 up. Then I'll go 1, 2, 3 for the radius of 3 over. Then I'll go 1, 2, 3 for the radius of 3 down. And then 1, 2, 3 for the radius of 3 over. Now, of course, because I didn't draw this on a perfect coordinate plane, it's not perfect. But what you can see is that it is centered at 3, -2, and that it has a radius of 3 in every direction. All right, so I'm just going to do a couple more of those so you can see. And then the Desmos activity really is just a chance for you to play with the circles and to see what they do in different graphs. That's one of the coolest things about Desmos, is just being able to kind of play with it and see what happens. Let me get my eraser. I'm going to leave the equation up. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to write a new formula. Now, if the last number is not a perfect square, you can always just take the square root on a calculator and use the decimal and just get the closest that you can. You could, depending on how you write the equation, like I could say, and notice I didn't actually square it, I just put the radius in a squared symbol. So then what I would know is that this is actually the radius. So if I were to want to draw it, I wouldn't have to stress about taking the square root of it because I just left it in that format. But usually it'll be a number, right? So it'll usually be like 16, or like I said, sometimes it won't be perfect. All right, so our center, our x value is trapped with x. Notice it's a plus, but remember it should be a minus. So what turns the minus into a plus is another negative. So if it is a +1, it's actually going to be a -1. If it is a negative, right, for y is a -3, it's going to change and become a +3. So same number, opposite sign. Our radius will be the square root of 16, which is 4. Now, technically, it is plus or minus 4 because we go up 4, down 4, right 4, left 4. You really go 4 all the way around the circle, but you don't need to include the plus minus because it's not going to really make a difference in the way we're thinking. All right, so my center is at -1, 3, and then I need to count 4 in every direction. So I didn't need 4 in every direction necessarily, just from the center. And then I'm going to go ahead and go up 4. That might have been too far. Whoops. 4. And then over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then down 4. And then right 4. So that one actually is better off up there. Whee! Terrible circle. But you get the idea of it. Okay? If you have questions, remember I have office hours. You can always attend my office hours. If you can't make my office hours, you can always let me know and we can meet at a time that works better for you. You can always email me. You can send me a remind. You can send me a comment in Google Classroom. You can leave a comment on the video. Any way you need to get a hold of me for help. Remember, if you're struggling with anything that's happening in the class, just let me know. And we can look at finding you an alternate way to do that. So I know, like, for example, my kid's having a really difficult time with Flipgrid right now. So if you haven't done the very first assignment that involved Flipgrid, let me know if you're having technical difficulties and we'll find a different way to do it. All right. So he's having trouble with, it's like not loading right or whatever. All right. So questions, get a hold of me. Leave me a comment if you need one, need to. Send me a message on Remind, send me an email, any of that sort of thing. All right, but try the Desmos activity. Remember, trying is the most important.